With all the new Zendikar Rising previews, we're getting a chance to catch up with a lot of familiar faces. While Nahiri and Jace both look fantastic, it was Nissa who stood out to me, because she was sporting a new color. A color I thought we'd never see her in. A color associated with a time forgotten, of a Nissa that we used to know. It got me thinking of what happened with Nissa's reboot in Magic Origins, and how we lost out on not just a story of her growing as a character, but a chance for us to grow alongside her. Today, I want to tackle a very difficult topic. I was very hesitant to write or talk about this, as it's a topic that requires a lot of nuance, but because of the intricacies required, I felt it was important to discuss. Could we have redeemed Nissa, and why redemption arcs are important to help us grow? Due to the delicate subject matter, I want to add a few disclosures to start with. First of all, racists can suck it. While I believe we can all be better, until we see that they've genuinely improved or are making a real effort, I'm not messing around with those idiots, so we will not be defending them. Redemption is not handed, it is earned. Secondly, this won't be just me shouting, "Nissa's a racist," as I think that's a lazy assessment and doesn't do anything or make any new or exciting points. Third, even when a person is trying to be better, they're not owed any type of recognition by any marginalized group that they've wronged. They don't deserve to be patted on the back for doing nothing or just promising that they're going to do better, as I'll go over. Fourth, using a fictional race, such as goblins, as a stand-in for actual oppressed groups is not okay. There is a difference between what the story can tell us about general discrimination versus having direct allegories, as that is problematic. Finally, this will not go over how totally effed it was for Wizard to queerbait Nissa and Chandra. That is a whole other level of messed up that I can't even begin to tackle for multiple reasons. First one being, I'm more or less a heterosexual male, and that is 100% not my place to give my opinion on that. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. When I read the Origins reboot for Nissa Revane 5 years ago, I wasn't really shocked or upset, and if I recall correctly, there was a bit of an uproar surrounding the continuity shift, but I felt nothing but indifference. However, recent previews got me thinking about what could have been. For those newer to Magic the Gathering and only know her as she is now, the Nissa of old was quite different. Sterner. More ruthless. So, a little backstory. Nissa was originally designed to be an avatar used for the Duel of the Planeswalker game for the Golgari Elf deck, as Wizards felt at the time that Garruk wouldn't command a green-black deck. Ironic. She was described to be villainous, staunch, and xenophobic, almost like a dark mirror of the animus we now know. Nissa, even in her design, was meant to be very visually off-putting and distinctly non-human, with her lack of eyebrows and luminescent orb-like green eyes. Her goals were not to altruistically save Zendikar and bring harmony. No, it was a very simple yet sinister goal. It was to assert total elvish dominance, not just on Zendikar, but throughout the entire multiverse. During her sojourns, she found Lorwyn, a plane, to her delight, that had been dominated by the elves and their aristocracy. Ruthless and stern, she was impressed by their command of the plane, and it was after this encounter she began to experiment with black mana. A very important distinction with this original Nissa is she is the leader of her tribe rather than an outcast. As well, Zendikar is portrayed as being much harsher and indifferent to the elves. Due to the savagery of Zendikar, the de facto rule is survival of the fittest, which means she felt nothing but contempt for the weak, as it meant you were dead weight. I know a lot of you want to stop the video and say something to the extent of, haters gonna hate, but don't worry. This Nissa, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists. She was changed leading up to Origins and rewritten to be a lot less xenophobic and ethnocentric in her beliefs. It was to make her values line up with the company's and set her up right for the best going forward. With Garruk becoming corrupted by the Chain Veil and the overarching plan of the Gatewatch being put into motion, Nissa became their go-to green mage. So they decided, we can rebuild her. Nicer. Sweeter. More marketable than before. And now we have the Nissa we know and stand today. But I can't help but feel we lost out on so much by not exploring this distinctly flawed and villainous Nissa. Villainissa, if you will. Instead of delving into the tangled weeds that could have been this character's backstory, they just sanitized her for the market. Perhaps, though, I'm being a bit too harsh. We should ask the question, Could they have even written a redemption arc for Nissa? I realized as I was doing research for this that the entire question of could they even continue having Nissa as she was and grow and redeem herself was predicated on one very simple factor. In the origin story, we know Nissa 2.0 would never harm another innocent living creature and was horrified at the hunting of the Eyeblights. However, in the original biography of Nissa Revane, it said that she visited Lorwyn and was impressed, but what it does not confirm is, did she participate in the hunting of the Eyeblights? This is exceedingly important when it comes to trying to craft a redemption arc. We can joke about how Nissa is a bigot and a racist all we want, but at least for me, I would struggle to accept and forgive as the reader and the consumer a character who not only held these hateful beliefs, but killed because of them. I think that would set the wrong example and a lot of people would call BS on it. That said, nowhere does it say in her original biography that she participated in the hunting of the Eyeblights, merely the Lorwyn elves had impressed her enough to consider dabbling in black magic. So the question of, can we write a redemption arc for her? Oh yes. Would it be difficult? For sure. Hell, I struggled to put this together trying to make it clear what I wanted to discuss. And much like me having this discussion, I feel like there's a great deal lost by not having that Nissa take this path. From a storytelling perspective, it's a missed opportunity for an amazing story. Just a little literature lesson here. There are two kinds of characters, static and dynamic. Static characters more or less stay the same and do not significantly grow as the story progresses. Like Popeye, they are who they are. Dynamic characters, on the other hand, usually experience significant growth and change to their character and face many tests that challenge who and what they are. Consequently, dynamic characters often lead to more compelling stories, because often static characters face external challenges while the real battle for dynamic characters are within. While Nissa believing in her connection to Zendikar sounds like an internal struggle, it seems really shallow compared to, I had to learn that other life had value outside of my own race, and redefine who I am because of it. It is very hard for people to relate to connecting to the soul of a world, as opposed to having to confront your own pride and deep-seated beliefs. I know these topics are hard, but that's also why they'd be engaging and relatable. The reason this kind of story matters is much more beyond racism is wrong. The people watching that know this, and people who are hardcore racists are not likely to change their views or care. But this story would not be for them. No. With the state of the country the way it is, I think now more than ever, we need redemption arcs because they talk about more than what the story explicitly mentions. As a person of color, I've had many encounters with racist or bigoted people, but I know not all of them are evil. This isn't some naivete, mind you. I've had many confess to me, I have these racist and discriminatory views. It's how I was raised. I don't know how to change. And I'm afraid to ask. I want to be better so badly, but I don't know how. That kills me. It really does. Aside from showing how ingrained racism is in our society, there are people with these racist views who are aware it's messed up and are struggling to be better, but are afraid to ask. It's people like that I think could really use a story of a bigoted xenophobe trying to be better. They need that pathway. Not the already staunch ally looking to pat himself on the back or the racist screaming about forced representation, but the people who are trying to be better, who want to be better. These type of stories will really help them out, but they apply to so much more than that too. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got growing up in the distinctly white high school of my hometown was from a teacher. Ryan, it's okay to be wrong. It seems like such a simple thing to say. It seems like it shouldn't mean anything, but that advice had more impact on my life than any other. Redemption arcs, like what Nissa could have had, is normalizing the idea that your deep-seated beliefs, a core part of who you are, could be wrong, and that's okay. I feel like this perspective is especially needed in the Magic community. Much similar to Nissa Original, the Magic the Gathering community despises weakness and seems to fear admitting we're wrong to the point that we end up making our situations worse, usually. While we may not be releasing Eldrazi under some misguided belief, we've all made comments which were tone-deaf and realized we were wrong, but rather than admit that, dug our heels in and tried to downplay what we said. It's okay to be wrong, and the journey to being a better person isn't an easy one. But What would such a journey look like to Nissa? I thought about this for a long time and came up with some parameters I would like to have seen if they actually want to tackle this trial of improving oneself and have it be meaningful. To begin with, I think it'd be important for someone to actually confront her directly on her views. My choice would be the Goblin Planeswalker Duretti. He'd be curt and abrupt, because when being confronted with your own biases, it is not something that should be done at the individual's leisure. Duretti himself has faced discrimination multiple times due to being a goblin on Fiora. This would be important because in these situations, we often get defensive, especially if we're forced to see an affected party face to face. We can even have Nissa getting upset and leaving, while having the other members of the Gatewatch get mad with Duretti for even bringing up the subject. Nissa's path to become better and confront her xenophobia, while not needing to always be the main focal point, has to be an ongoing journey. It's not something that can be just handed to her, and I would ideally have this cover several years with no time jumps. She would face setbacks and lapses, she would have to grow, and maybe there's even a period where she overcorrects, until eventually she's forced to admit, deep down, that these other sentient beings are worthy of not only existing, but of love and understanding. Something she herself would have to discover. Final, and most important part, is how the arc resolves. Ideally, it never resolves, but it being a function of the story, it has to end at some point. This part to viewers is the hardest, but most important part of the journey. Duretti confronts her, or has been routinely interacting with her. At the end, Nissa will expect some sort of traditional resolution where she becomes a friend, and they embrace, and it's a happy ending for all. However, Duretti, while acknowledging she has become a better person, can't forgive her for who she was, and can't let go of the anger he has towards her. He's hopeful for the future, but just because this is her moment, doesn't mean it's his. Nissa would be upset, but also there'd be a quiet somberness, as she understood. She was better, but that doesn't undo the hurt she did. So, the best she can do is continue to be better than she was. She is not owed Duretti or anyone's forgiveness. It is not a happy ending, but it's not terrible either. It's bittersweet. This would be a reflection of the world rather than a romanticized resolution. And this could still actually be done. If you want to resolve the two continuities, in the origin story, Home, Nissa escapes just before she is affected by the Great Aurora. Or is that merely what she remembers? What if Nissa had planeswalked as her darker self to Lorwyn, and despite thinking she had escaped, she was indeed affected by the Great Aurora? It didn't just rewrite who she is, but her memories as well. She would be haunted by visions of her past self, and eventually re-meet the savage Jiraga tribe, furious with her for abandoning them. This would be great because it would provide an avenue for Nissa to confront these darker aspects of her conception, and eventually be forced to grapple with who she was and who she is now. Nissa could still have this redemption arc. After all, 2015 was a very different time. When I saw Golgari Nissa, I got a little excited because maybe that meant it'd be happening sooner than later. Maybe Wizards had seen so many other companies had done with their problematic characters and realized they too could give Nissa that chance. Even in other forms of storytelling, we see this redemption arc executed well, and it had a certain level of veracity and relatability to the character, and served as a vehicle for not just the character to improve themselves, but the reader as well. Most iconic of which was Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, being revealed as a bit of a racist, often only protecting upper-class neighborhoods and ignoring lower-income ones, as well as having a mild disdain for the Lantern he was training, John Stewart. Hal Jordan's journey was a long and ongoing one, but it was ultimately satisfying because it wasn't handed to him and he had to actually confront his real biases. He eventually learned to grow and respect John as not just his subordinate, but as his equal. That's real character growth. And for longtime fans of Green Lantern, it was a journey worth following. At our core, we are dynamic characters. We can grow and change. As my friend Mara pointed out, just because Nissa wasn't able to grow, doesn't mean we can't. I can understand why Wizards of the Coast didn't want to spend time and effort putting this together. It would force them to confront a lot of the darker aspects of not just Nissa's design, but a lot of the darker aspects of both their company as well as their fan base. In general, this topic is a very heavy one that I hesitated to even bring up, But I feel like redemption arcs, especially on a character as deeply as flawed as Nissa was, can do so much more than tell a story. It can touch us deeply, and remind us that we don't always have to be who we are. We can be better. We just may be too afraid or don't know how.